Well, my name's John Lee Pettimore.
Good afternoon, London News on Thursday, the 8th of October. Actually got it right. Anyway, I don't have any prompts, so I do get things wrong. Listen, I'll have a brief introduction to Alex Jones. He's got the great man from The Outsiders on. Plus, we got that lady who really knows the Constitution. She's back on again. It's all part of Sky News. Fantastic information. So have a look at it. Wait till the end. I will put some details of contact at the end. But this is a very important subject about this virus. I've decided they should have renamed it a way back, called the Democratic virus, because it's created by the Democrats to inhibit the voting in America. They want postal votes, just like we have now for the council elections, which really are about as important as, Anyway, anyhow, have a look at Alex Jones and his guests. Fantastic information. That's why I believe it should be shared all around the country and overseas in Ireland, because what happens in here affects Ireland, and the United States affects us as well. So we're basically all controlled by the same crooks, politicians. So the Democratic Party virus affects us all. So have a look at this and I'll get back to you.
Because I'm sick to death of all this business about a COVID budget. We had it over and over again last night, boringly repetitive. This is not a COVID budget or a coronavirus budget. We're being brainwashed, of course, we hope. They hope we'll believe that, just as they hope we'll believe that this is a pandemic and look out, you're all going to die. Not one political leader, and I've been saying this, haven't I, for months, since February, has said 99% of the cases are mild. Now, for example, I keep repeating what Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, said on March 15. For the majority, this is what he said, there it is on the screen, around 8 in 10, it'll be a mild illness and it will pass. He said, however, for older Australians and those who are more vulnerable, it's a far more serious virus, and that is our concern. He said, our aim in all of this is to protect the most vulnerable, the most at risk. Well, what do? We didn't do that. And so suddenly, in an overreaction, and we had all this hysteria and alarmism and fear, everything is locked down, everything. And the economy is ground to a halt. Business is put out of business, workers are put out of work, and suddenly we feel that the whole world is about to end. So what have we got last night now? I mean, this is humbug. This notion about a coronavirus budget is absolute humbug. So, unsurprisingly, last night, in order to try to correct the mess that's been created by government, Scott Morrison said, protect the vulnerable. Well, let the rest get on with their lives. But no, everything was shut down. The cities of Australia became morgues. And there are some businesses that still aren't open and may never open. And there are thousands of people, millions, 1.5 million. There was 3.5 million on JobKeeper. And this has all happened. And so suddenly last night, what are they saying? They didn't tell you this. They said, oh, well, we're in a bit of a mess here now. So now they're throwing money everywhere simply to avoid massive unemployment queues and business bankruptcy. So if you chuck some money at an apprentice, you pay business money to employ people, or you open more university places, could you believe that? Because those people won't go on the unemployment list. And you can't win an election with unemployment above 10%. Now, these words are used, aren't they? We have monetary policy and fiscal policy. Monetary policy is where they change interest rates. Well, interest rates are almost zero. Fiscal policy is about expenditure. Well, let me tell you something about fiscal policy. It's got nothing to do with economic health. Nothing. Fiscal policy is about ideology and politics. Ideology, where once upon a time they thought a Liberal government would not spend as if the money was going out of style. But politically, fiscal policy helps us put people on side. Money in the pocket, aren't they good? They keep giving us this dough. Oh, it's borrowed, don't worry about it. We just hope this works. We should never have been in this position. And still, we haven't had one politician say to Australia, listen, the good news is 99% of these cases are mild. There are, as I speak to you, 4 people in Australia seriously ill. But we had last week, I told you about it, evidence that figures in Victoria were doctored. Why? Well, to justify the alarmism at the beginning. When will this end? But more importantly, what will the end look like? When will someone give us our lives back? We can look after our own health. We're not stupid. They announced in the budget last night another $27 billion for education. Spending all this money and then treating us as if we're stupid. We know how to look after ourselves. We know what the Prime Minister said on the 15th of March. There are vulnerable people, the elderly. We'll look after them. We didn't. And I'll be talking about that aged care issue later on in the program. But now, having been made prisoners in a so-called liberal democracy, freedoms taken from us, the very freedoms, I've said many times, that men and women died for. Now we are prisoners again, prisoners of debt. And the government still controlling our lives. You are dependent on us now. We're the ones shoveling it out to you. And they love it. They love it. We are, I'm telling you, been around a bit. We're creating a dangerous environment here, perpetuating the view that government have the answers. Are you kidding me? Those who created the problem and the disproportionate response now reckon they have the answer. And the mournful presentation by the Treasurer last night made me think we were at a funeral. Perhaps we were. Is our nation and all its wealth and opportunity and hope, are these being buried in fear, alarmism and debt? We want leaders to give us hope, to breathe hope. That's what a leader's job is. But our leaders have made us dependent on them. Not for me, I'm telling you. This kind of world. Have a listen to this. This is Josh Frydenberg last night. It's a dirge. Here he is.
In 2020, Australians have been tested like never before. Flood, fires, drought, and a global pandemic. So many Australians, through no fault of their own, are doing it tough. Lives have been lost. Businesses have closed. Jobs have gone. Our cherished way of life has been put on hold. We are a resilient people, a proud nation, and we will get through this together.
Well, all we lacked was the violins. I mean, you don't get this presentation at funerals. Oddly enough, this week, the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, spoke at the Conservative Party conference. Listen to the change of tone here. This is the British Chancellor of the Exchequer.
But more than the measures themselves, it is the values behind them that I want to impress upon you. Conservatives believe in the importance of community and belonging. We believe in personal responsibility and pragmatism. We believe in the nobility of work and free enterprise. And we believe in the unbreakable bond of union that unites the four nations of our United Kingdom. Our values are old and true and have withstood tests of strife, of terror, and even war. They are timeless because they are a wisdom earned over generations. And they are universal because they are rooted in the fundamental belief that individual freedom enables both the greatest achievement and the gentlest kindness. People looked at us last December and saw this Conservative Party. They saw a party whose values and priorities were aligned with those of the British people.
Well, there you are. That's the 40-year-old Rishi Sunak. The language is significant, isn't it? We believe in personal responsibility and pragmatism, personal responsibility. None of that last night. The government's here to look after you. To the tune of over $500 billion has been handed out since February. We believe in the nobility of work and free enterprise, he said. Our values are old and true. They've withstood the test, he said, of strife and terror and even war. He said they're timeless because they are a wisdom earnt over generations. He said, and they're universal. Well, they are universal. I'll tell you what, we've got a bit of waking up to do. Let me just say this. Look, the challenges we face today are not those that I heard last night. I want to say this to you wherever you are and wherever you're watching. Come on, Australia. Look, I'm not in the dressing room, I know, but hang on. This is not us. We don't want to live as handmaidens of government. We don't want to talk enterprise and effort. We want to practice it. We want government out of our lives. Government is there to build schools and hospitals and look after our defence, keep the nation safe. It is not there to bribe us into voting for them because they will put more of someone else's money in our pocket than the other mob will. Now, come on, Australia. We ought to pledge ourselves not to take someone else's money. While we've got an able body and a willing mind, for God's sake, get out there and fend for ourselves. I know it's a cliche, but that's the sort of thing that made Australia great. We were workers, not loafers. We were givers, not takers. We need young people to be givers and workers. And I'm sorry, handing out free money doesn't help that. The Liberal Party says it's the child of Sir Robert Menzies. Menzies faced a greater economic crisis post-World War II than we face now. Debt was 120% of GDP. Here today, it's 55%. Menzies said in 1945 that the first impulse of a Liberal government in times like these, after the war, should be, and I quote, to seek the private enterprise answer, to help the individual help himself, to create a climate, economic, social and industrial favourable to his activity and growth, unquote. Nothing there about asking government, let alone government splashing money around. I said on Monday, and I'm sorry, we've lost our way. We got it wrong at the outset. The response to this virus was totally out of proportion to the danger. And our leaders need to go back and do a bit of reading of history. What do you think? Alan at skynews.com.au or text me 0414 000 848. Well, look, I've made the point many times, and I'll again tomorrow in my column in the Daily Telegraph, the Courier Mail and the Gold Coast Bulletin, that the government now is repetitively talking about a coronavirus budget. The economic crisis we face is a consequence of the utterly disproportionate response to the so-called health crisis, which, in spite of the alarmism, has been felt most tragically in the aged care sector, who are always at risk, but which sector has been abandoned. And with that, we've abandoned fundamental freedoms that ought to be available to us all, for which men and women died at war. Now, it's all very well saying Victoria is a police state. I could go around every state with ridiculous and demeaning rules which are a denial of freedom, to say nothing about the entitlement to live your own life. You can go to the beach, but you've got to be a towel apart. Who said so? You can go to a wedding, but only 20, and only 2 on the dance floor. Oh, and you can't stand. No, you can't stand up, and you can't sing, you can't kiss. What road are we heading down? A school group in Queensland, excited about their formal, arrived to find that they'd been allocated 10 to a table. The tables were half a mile apart. They'd made a big effort, these kids, but they weren't allowed to stand or move around, and each table was given a pack of cards so they could enjoy the night. This stuff's everywhere. There is no epidemiological justification for any of it, and so we give thanks again to Catherine McGregor. Catherine joins us from Canberra. Catherine, thank you for your time again, but look, even though you wrote splendidly a week ago from Canberra, and I quote what Catherine wrote, spring has come subtly to the national capital. It always does. The chill of morning and the belated blizzard conditions obscure from all but the most vigilant observer the explosion of blossoms, unquote. It's beautiful writing. But she proceeded with some, quote, random observations. And she admitted she was neither an economist or an epidemiologist, and she had no modelling to support her conclusions. But the point attracted me was the fact that she said, quote, my confidence has steadily but ineluctably, which means unavoidably, been eroded. And Canberra was in hard stage 4 lockdown, and she said the world had shrunk around me. Now, Nick Cater, in a splendid piece today in The Australian, talks about the enemies of democracy having a wonderful year, deftly turning the war on coronavirus into a war against their own citizens. Catherine, you can't disagree with that, can you?
No, I read Nick's piece with interest because it was a meditation also on a work by H.R. McMaster, who's a splendid scholar and was a magnificent soldier. I happened to have the pleasure of knowing him when I was at Oxford in the Changing Character of War program. And he made the point, Alan, that we've been labouring on this program right throughout the year, namely that the revisionist states of China and Russia regard the very existence of liberal democracy in the global system as, using a poor pun, a viral threat to their survival, which is why they're so committed to the destruction of the norms that support liberal democracy, especially in the United States, and why they've sought to exploit fault lines in our communities. But we've, as Nick pointed out, abetted that process a little with some of the quite arbitrary measures that we've seen imposed right throughout the Western world. Some relief tonight, though. I just came in on the tail end to hear that the Victorian Omnibus Bill, that odious piece of legislation that we criticised, has been withdrawn.
Absolutely.
So a tiny victory to give some hope. But yes,
but I want to raise this. That you wrote, in the real world, I detect anxiety, depression and fatigue on an epidemic scale, and you ask, is this the new normal? Catherine, come on, I mean, you're smart. When does this end?
well, I think that's what's leading to the anxiety, Alan, is that people keep talking about roadmaps, but they're all into cul-de-sacs. No one's offering any metrics, or, you're getting this nonsense about the Queensland border with these entirely unrealistic quotas being applied to community transmissions in New South Wales. And you can see Gladys Berejiklian, who's maintaining her patience and her dignity with some degree of difficulty, saying, look, it's highly unlikely we'll ever achieve the metric that Palaszczuk is insisting on. And again, coming back to one of our familiar themes, the Constitution was drafted and framed by people to survive hardships. We've endured 2 global wars. We managed to go to the polls in both of them, and we even had we had referenda in the Great War about whether we'd conscript young men to go to war. We were a functioning democracy that could disagree civilly and vote and run the gauntlet. And here we are now with the Constitution being trampled on by elected governments. We're seeing the concentration of executive power, government by fiat, with parliaments not sitting or sitting on the bridge basis. There's a lot to worry about.
There is a lot to worry about. Just finally, before you go, you see, I don't want to let anyone off the hook here. They talk about Victorian lockdown, border lockdowns and so on, but we've still got this business about you can go to the beach, but there's got to be a towel. You can have a Christmas dinner, but there can't be any more than 20. You can go to a wedding and only 2 on the dance floor. This is universal. All these political leaders are in the same boat here, Catherine.
Look, that is the issue, and I won't name the sources, but I know there are people in the federal government very, very toey about the fact that the border challenges have been left. We haven't taken that challenge up. I've spoken to a number of people, and there are people spoiling to have a blue over borders and over other issues as well. And I think, the sooner the better in that case, in the case of that Queensland border. And I think that time comes to have the fight.
Economy.
It's worth having the fight.
Open the economy. Let us live our lives. Let us stop treating us like school kids. Let us live our lives.
Well, Indeed, and most of these, everything about the expenditure to which you alluded, Alan, is so caveated. If you read between the lines, a lot of it is presumed on a vaccine being discovered at some mystical point down the road, and they're living with a view of a national economy functioning in response to this stimulus. But we're still dealing with these fiefdoms closed off by border closures.
Absolutely.
So make sense of that.
Good on you, Carl. Good to talk to you, Catherine. Talk to you again next week.
And
talk to you again. There's Catherine McGregor.
You bet.
And to Culture Wars. Well, joining me as always for that is Rowan Dean, a columnist, editor, bon vivant, editor of Spectator Australia, should have added. Well-dressed host of Outsiders and Sky News on Sundays at 9 a.m, always looking bushy and everything like that. Rowan, great to see you. The reason I like having you on the show is that I have completely lost faith that Donald Trump is going to win the election. You keep coming back saying he is, and then I hope he is, but somewhere on the positive side of the ledger. And you told me today you got excited about an ad that he made to mark his return from hospital after supposedly recovering from the virus. Let's have a look at some of it. That is a heck of a bit of choreography there for a guy that's just got off his deathbed, according to me. Why does that make your heart go pitter-pat when I'm still thinking he's going to lose, he's going to lose, he's going to lose?
Okay, well, the first thing, Andrew, is rest assured he's going to win. He's going to win in a landslide. I'm just painting the picture for you. Here's the United States of America. It's basically all red, apart from a little bit of blue up here in the northeastern corner, and a little bit of large stretch of blue down on the west coast there, and a blob of blue in the middle, which is Colorado or somewhere. Other than that, it's all red. He only needs 270 college votes or whatever it is to win. He's going to get well over 300, 320, 330, whatever.
Right,
so he's going to win in a landslide.
Where do you get this
He's going to win in a landslide. So the reason is that when Donald Trump fights, Donald Trump wins. And the problem has been his initial instinct with the coronavirus was the same as here. OK, there's a deadly virus happening over in China. Well, what's the common sense thing to do? Stop the border, stop people coming in from China, and then just get on with it. Of course, that was immediately let's be really clear that the politicization of COVID was done entirely by the left. It was the left who said, oh, no, you're racist for doing that, and ordered people to go around and hug Chinese people at the Chinese New Year celebrations to get them kind of to show that they weren't racist. Then the left demonized drugs like hydroxychloroquine. The left have been playing this, and I don't need to tell you where you are now, how disastrous the left have been at playing politics with this virus. Donald Trump's instincts were, OK, it's dangerous, sure. But we've got to live with the thing and basically keep the economy going. Life goes on as normal. He's really floundered when, Biden and others seemed to be getting the better of him by saying, oh, we're all got to wear masks. And he kind of floundered there for a while. But now he's decided not only to fight the thing, he's fighting it on the basis he's had it. He's been there, he's had it, he knows what it's like, he's survived, and as far as he's concerned, and no one downplays the tragic deaths that have occurred, but as far as he's concerned, you fight it, you live with it, and you get on with it. That's his new pitch. That's hence the helicopter, the White House, all the grandiose Hollywood-style thing is, I'm back, here I am, I'm going to take Biden on this thing. So the choice now for the American people is the leader who's determined to get the economy back, saying, look, this thing's bad, but we're going to manage it, we're going to beat it, we're going to be fine with it, to this character wandering around in a black mask, miserable and depressed the whole time. The public loves a winner, the public loves a fighter, and they will be behind Trump all the way on this. Who are you going to vote for? A guy who says, don't worry too much about this thing, we can beat it, or the guy who's all panic and doom and gloom? I know who's going to win.
Well, I'd like to see that reflected in some polls very shortly, but we'll see.
The polls polls are propaganda for the media to sell the Biden message. You know that, Andrew.
I should have been at your lunch today with you, I think. Hey,
Tears
Rowan,
and Tim send their best.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Tim Storey, you're a great artist, man.
A democratic mask, but I think I'll take it off. The democratic mask. Anyway, I hope that you learned something, as I did, from those characters that Alex Jones introduced on Sky News. Fantastic. Look, we need all the information, and it's all relevant to what's happening. We have a terrible situation, but please God, it will all be over. I did use the term God. That's something that the government don't like you using, because you worship God or believe in God, you go to God for help rather than going to these criminals, right? And criminals they are. And it could be seen on reasonable grounds that all politicians are guilty of some crime in relation to the Constitution or the lack of Constitution. And our enemies, politicians are the enemies, along with the Bar Association and all members of it, apart from a few. Anyway, London News sign off. Thanks for watching, guys. And I will go live very soon. It's a big task, but I'm going to bring up some videos on related to our situation in Constitution, common law. Now, the common law court, I mentioned this, common law court, we had a meeting last night. There was nothing to publish because we're all in limbo till we can get the courts going. And we're in lockdown, as you know. In Victoria, we can't have a meeting. There are other people setting up courts in another state, Queensland area. And you can't have a common law court when you start talking about the Constitution. And when you swear people in as citizens, as sheriffs, as citizens, because there's a contradiction there. common law court, international common law court, has got nothing to do with maritime commercial law, citizenships, persons, and the fictional courts or barristers or solicitors. This goes back before they existed and become a blight on our lives. Anyway, again, thanks for watching. Bye for now.